There are many spiritual practices: meditation, mindfulness or witnessing, surrender, devotion, love, and compassion. This is because we are all different. What is easy for one may be difficult for others. However, no matter what it is, the main, if not the sole purpose of all spiritual practices is to achieve peace or stillness of the mind. We are going to discuss in greater detail two of them, meditation and witnessing. How do they work in bringing about peace and stillness of the mind, and how to deepen these practices to what is known as self-enquiry. Meditation is simply the focusing on a single object or thought at the exclusion of other thoughts. The object of focus can be anything: a chant, a sound, an image, breathing, counting, even some simple movement like walking. The object of meditation should be chosen to suit one's psychological profile, that is either auditory, visual, or kinesthetic. Peace of the mind is broken when there is a disturbing thought arising and lingering in the mind. Very often it comes as a collection of thoughts and emotions. In Advaita, this is known as vasana. These vasanas are habitual, in the sense that they display the same pattern of thoughts and emotions when they arise: anger, resentment, blaming, being defensive, questioning why me, and so on. When they emerge, they may stay on for a while before sinking back below the surface of consciousness, where they will lie dormant till the next trigger. In other words, they are conditioned. These vasanas cannot be simply wished away. To dissolve them, one has to face them head on. Meditation is a very effective tool to do so. The method is very simple. When the vasanas emerge, all that is needed is to simply turn away from them and turn to the focus of one's meditation. This is not a repression. There is no pushing away. It is a simple turning away from giving them attention. It works on a very simple principle. When a disturbing thought arises, if one gives it attention by identifying with it or getting lost in it, the thought gains energy. Not physical, but more psychic or emotional energy. If one instead turns away from it consciously, it is deprived of this supply of energy. This will mean the next time the same thought emerges, it contains lesser energy. Of course, this is easier said than done. The more energy the vasana contains, the stronger will be its pull for attention. What typically happens is a real battle, a battle for attention. But if this is successfully done repeatedly, the thought will simply fade away. What remains ultimately is merely a neutral memory, devoid of any emotional content. Witnessing, sometimes also referred to as mindfulness, simply means observing something without generating cascading thoughts or running commentary in the head. The object of the witnessing can be anything, but one common practice is to observe thoughts that arise in one's mind. Another common practice is witnessing one's surrounding and activities, which is commonly known as being here and now. While observing these thoughts as they appear and disappear in our mind, we need to be careful not to identify with or getting lost in them. Let's take, for example, there is an angry thought arising. If one is identified with the thought, one would say and feel, "I am angry," or "I feel anger." On the other hand, if one is simply witnessing the thought, one would say, "There is an angry thought." The feeling is very different. It is as if one is looking at it from the outside. It's like looking at a traffic jam from far away, instead of being caught in the middle of it. Identifying with a thought gives it energy. Not identifying with it will deprive it of more energy. Thus, if one succeeds in doing this repeatedly, it will cause the thought to simply fade away. Self-enquiry or Atma Vichara is perhaps the most direct and deepest spiritual practice we can ever do. It is very subtle and not easily done. We should perhaps attempt it only when we have reached a certain level of peace and stillness in the mind. Or to put it another way, when we have successfully dissolved all the major vasanas in our life. Meditation can be deepened to self-enquiry by changing the object of the focus. It is now directed inwards towards our very own being or presence, which is in fact consciousness or awareness. Aware that I am aware, or aware that this is awareness. During the interval when there is no thought arising, something of course remains. It's not a void. It's simple awareness or consciousness. It is towards this that we are directing our attention. In a way, it's very peculiar because here the subject has now become the object of focus. It has to be noted here that this is not the self knowing itself, and that is impossible because it would imply that there are two selves, the knower self and the known self, which is of course absurd. But this is perhaps the closest that we can ever get to knowing the self. It is not an easy practice to do. It's very subtle. At the beginning, it is very likely to be more of a mental or intellectual exercise. But if we were to persevere and continue with the practice, it will deepen, and eventually we can sense and feel it. Initially, we may have to practice self-enquiry, sitting down with the eyes closed to reduce the distraction from the senses. But as we become more adept, it can be done with the eyes open, and even when engaging in some simple and routine activities like walking or jogging. This practice is very powerful because not only is it a meditation, it is also a practice that directs us to our very essential nature. For the witnessing practice, instead of witnessing thoughts, we now direct our witnessing inwards towards who is doing the witnessing rather than what is being witnessed. Once the self-enquiry practice has deepened to a point in which it is firmly established, it can be dropped. There is no need to keep reminding ourselves that we are aware or conscious, because we are already so. The final goal, as we have mentioned earlier, is to achieve peace or total stillness of the mind. What happens then? Patanjali, in the first stanza of his Yoga Sutra, says that when the mind is perfectly still, its real nature will reveal itself. We will know who we really are. In other words, we would have answered the question, who am I? When that question is answered, we will automatically answer two other questions. Who is God? And what is reality? These questions are essentially one and the same. You answer one, you answer all.